You know, I find it funny that a Praxic Warlock is going to give me a general lesson about why I shouldn't side with the Drifter. Honor, you could send me all the messages you want. My mind was made up a long time ago. Funny enough, it seems you may have forgotten your history. Then again, maybe the Vanguard and the city have as well. It's time to let Thunder reign again. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been a crazy silly last few months for me, and you guys have been very supportive of what I've needed to do over those months. Not gonna harp on it too much, but I wanted to address my time away a little bit. I didn't want this video necessarily to be my first video back, but you have to start somewhere. And this topic kinda hits home for me for several reasons. To preface, my reasonings for choosing a side with the Drifter over the Vanguard is going to be one made of pure philosophy, and it won't seem apparent right away. I don't expect you to choose the Drifter based on my talking points. It's my decision entirely. My general point will also be kind of roundabout, but if you've been around for a bit, you know that's nothing new for me anyway. I will also address the elephant in the room that there's a lot of web lore I'm not covering here today, but will be indirectly referencing, sort of. Though some may know of Honor from in-game messages, but, well, if you haven't read over the new web lore, give it a read. I'll address them a bit later on, but it'll be in another video entirely. Alright, let's get into it. If you've been around the channel for a while, you might know that Thunderlord was my first exotic in Destiny 1. I used that thing in every situation and barely removed it from my Guardian. To me, it's a fantastic weapon with a lot of heart, but I could be extremely biased in that regard. Granted, in some cases, especially today, it's almost a little too good, but well, this isn't a balanced video. What am I going on about? Let's start with the entries from Thunderlord. I say entries because we now have more than one, and we also have two offshoots to consider in this department, like Abbadon and Nova Mortis. These three weapons make up a united series of weapons that tell a story much deeper than I previously had expected. While the entries for Thunderlord have information I do want to reference, I will point out an old video I made quite some time ago that goes over the three weapons and the implications that each allow for. If you're interested in the possible connections and constructions of these weapons, some possible historic links, and other general nonsense, check that video out. I'll be focusing on other elements for these entries entirely, however, so keep that in mind. Thanks to the new Thunderlord entry in Season of the Forge, we've got more direction to go with this story, and it tells one that I, again, wasn't expecting to see at all. First, let's give the flavor text for each weapon a read. They rest quiet on fields afar, for this is no ending but the eye, hymn of the Thunderlord. From the space between I come, fragments of stars burn in my footsteps. In my hands I hold death. Song of the Nova Mortis. I am one with the flame, the conflagration reborn. I am your funeral pyre. Anthem of the Abbadon. They return from fields afar. The eye has passed, the end nears. Do not fade quietly. Let thunder reign again. Thunderlord, Season of the Forge. While I know the last one isn't generally in line with the songs and such in place from the previous three, it still does align with the general feeling of what is being portrayed from the others. It could be another piece of the hymn of the Thunderlord for all we know, but there's no confirmation of that. Some of you may be familiar with an event on Luna, Earth's moon. For those that forgot that location in game, I miss that station. I miss the Hellmouth. Heck, I kinda miss Crota, come to think of it. Speaking of Crota, this event is called the Great Disaster. Yeah, when was the last time you heard someone talk about that? It's almost like that's on purpose or something. It's also a distinct possibility of why Thunderlord was found on Master Ives, and why the Fallen ended up pillaging the thing, and why the entry of their return could be hidden from us until now. Thunderlord, Nova Mortis, and Abbadon are direct references of a couple of Guardians that seem to have had boots on the ground during this event, an event in which we lost thousands of Guardians at the hands of Crota and the swords of the Hive. The lessons learned from this event are only felt by a few, but yet the masses as well, just more indirectly. With the loss of so many Guardians, one can only guess how many suffered from after effects of the conflict on both the civilians and Guardians proper. I just wonder if mental disorders may have cropped up, PTSD just to name one major one that I'm thinking of. In addition, we see a lunar interdiction put in place by the leader of the city at the time, being the Speaker. This meant that travel from Earth to Luna was cut off, and this may have also marooned Guardians that were still in the fields of battle on Luna, especially if they didn't have a way to get off of Luna from broken ships or no transport at all. But that's some general assumptions on my part. Doesn't help those assumptions are somewhat backed up by the entries of these three weapons, however. We also saw a warlock vow to take down Crota with the aid of a hunter and 4 other members of the first Crota fire team. The doomed fire team, as I kinda like to call them, though I don't know if like is the proper word. Ariana 3, Eris Morn, Vel Tarlo, Sai Mota, Omar Aga, and Toland, the Shattered. Well, at least Eris came back. Sort of. Ariana 3 is perhaps the best to focus on, however. Driven by revenge for Crota killing her love, the legendary Titan Wei Ning, she is said to be a warlock of the Praxic Order, marked by the Cormorant seal. This story is a bit of an old one, so I'm not going to look over too much, but reminder of the background material is kind of necessary. And again, I don't know the last time that this story was necessarily brought up, at least directly so. What I never expected was for Thunderlord to be a love story. What hurts is that it's a tale that we'll never truly hear the end to, or even a reminder of who the two involved in this tale were. This is a solid reminder that if an event in history doesn't help the city look good, especially in the cases of decisions by the Vanguard or Speaker to send thousands of Guardians, for instance, into a situation unprepared, they attempt to just cover it up and move on. History is written by the victor, unless the victor looks bad. Not every member of the battle is covered up, of course. We know about Ariana 3, Eris Morn, and Wei Ning, just to name a few. These are very prominent figures in the Battle of Mare Imbrium, the site of this great disaster. Wei Ning, I can't help but note, might be largely followed because of her involvement with the Firebreak Order of Titans in the early days of the city. In the Fire Victorious Ghost Shell, the Fire Victorious itself is a flame lit by Wei Ning. During the Red War, the Firebreak Plaza and the flame itself were subsequently damaged. These Titans are regarded as the ones that pushed out from the city in order to settle new land for us, and just to add general safety to the region and make sure civilians and others were safe or generally protected. It was an age before the walls, after all. Needed to be something else to make sure that we were safe. I bring up this piece of seemingly disconnected lore for a couple of reasons. One, it shows that Memoriam is something that the Vanguard and the city actively practice. 2, it shows that a member of the Great Disaster was memorialized before her death for the actions that she took to help the city as a whole. But yet, there's little mention of the Great Disaster aside from the retellings of the doomed fire team, and even then, only bits and pieces. That is, until we get the newest entry for Thunderlord. 2 they were, artist and scientist. Music flowed in their souls and rained from their lips. Not weapons of war they made, but instruments of peace. The thunder fell, and they were cast apart. Their love was sundered as the world collapsed. They sang in pain and sought to reunite, but crimson eyes glowed in the dark. Their union was not to be. He held death in his hands, stars burned in his footsteps. In her, the conflagration was reborn, the funeral pyre lit. and so forever after, their love fuels death. Their last words, a curse and a cry. Their names are now lost, but their love will not die. When I first read this entry, I basically just lost it. It's one reason you might see my footage have Thunderlord used as often as I may, thanks to my general connection with this weapon, but also as a remembrance piece to the Guardians that tried to survive a battle that they weren't even close to prepared for, sent by a group of people that felt they couldn't be defeated. Hubris at its finest. Anyway, before I get to ranting, let's break this down a little bit. You may find some relations to past entries here, like the ones I read earlier on. The Titan that created these two weapons seemed to favor Nova Mortis. The other in the story was the user of Abbadon. Once the calamity of battle ensued, they both seemed to be split up and they were never fated to meet again. Put yourself in that place with any loved one you can really think of. How would you feel in that situation? In the entry from Nova Mortis, the entry reads, "Before he died on the moon, the Titan who wielded the first Thunderlord created two variants of the mighty weapon." For me, I always felt this important to know, and why we never even realized the variant models of Thunderlord existed, as they were lost entirely on Luna thanks to the Great Disaster. It confirms that the gunsmith of Nova Mortis and Abbadon both had a fondness of the weapon frame for Thunderlord, but why he felt the need to create those two variants is unknown. I mean, outside of extra punishment for our enemies and possibly adapting to circumstance, that's highly possible. What's heartbreaking about this story is not the tragic love. It's not the point of two Guardians not being able to join again after the battle. It's not the general idea of losing two minds that seemed focused on something else, and ultimately a will to live, or that they seemed to be somewhat important figures through this set of poems. It's not even the loss of the two variant weapons, though I do miss having all three of them at this point. That last line is what killed me. The last line is what sent me into an emotional outburst that was entirely irrational. Their names are now lost, but their love will not die. Their names are now lost. I cannot, in any way or form, recall a point in which the Great Disaster is memorialized by our vanguard or the city as a whole. The absence of something doesn't make it true, of course, but even the general testament of how the vanguard seemed to treat that incident, how they treat Eris Morn upon her return from Luna after the interdiction is put in place, how little we seem to hear of the Great Disaster as a whole, how little we seem to want to face loss and death unless it directly impacts us, like that of Cade. This is an event that should have cemented itself in the minds of the Vanguard and those involved. I'm sure there's extra caution that's been placed on our missions, but no memoriam? No general assembly to mark when the Great Disaster happened? No moment of silence for it? Even if it was centuries ago, how would you allow thousands of dead to not be remembered? Ikora seems initially opposed to something as simple as the Festival of the Lost even, an event that can make a recalling of everyone that we lost, just as a general idea to cement this idea in our minds that yes, we honor our dead. What does it mean for the Guardians, she says to Eva Levante? Plenty. That you completely throw out this loss of life and have no place to remember the loss of thousands of your comrades infuriates me to a large degree. It makes me increasingly frustrated to be in this city. It makes me not give a damn about the Vanguard and the members in it. And I'm given increasing reason to not care since the death of Cade and the lack of action since. If my siding with the Drifter will be a wake-up call to the Vanguard of Ikora and Zavala, then I will gladly do so. Call me the rebellious child all you want. Call me an irrationally driven mess of a warlock. I could care less. Or just call me someone making the wrong decision as a player. Whatever you will. As it is, I more side with Ada 1 of the Black Armory anyway, even more than the future Workhole. Longtime listeners might know what that means for me. The Drifter has a goal in mind. As it stands, I feel like it might be a worthwhile one. His is not a stance for the darkness, from what I've been able to discern so far. It's also not a stance for light, either. His is a purpose that Gambit is even slowly starting to reveal to me with time, even as I play the game mode. Same with Gambit Prime, but that's for another day entirely. For me, this is the only thing I need to push me into helping the Drifter. The City Vanguard could rot tomorrow for all I care. As it is, that seems like the direction it's going anyway. I understand and can completely say that this is not the most structured video I've had in my catalog. I also don't care. In a way, I hope this shows the level that I'm at per the moment, where I'm alright with allowing my feelings to act in twain with the story that we have within Destiny, and to allow for my feelings to be heard as general as this game progresses, along with its lore. With how things have been changing and altering with time, I feel like videos like these have more of a place lately. I have to get my general feelings out quickly before we end up getting something new entirely. Doesn't mean the highly structured topics we're used to don't have a place, however. Just call it me shedding a skin in order to change a bit. Sort of like a snake. So, what's the point of this rant? Well, as always, it's to make you think about your decisions for the character you may care for the most. I know it's not a huge decision for your overall account. I mean, your Warlock could go with Honor because you're both Praxix or something, and your Hunter's like, nah man, screw the Vanguard, and he joins the Drifter. But, as I said at the top of the show, I just want thunder to reign again. And that thunder is the memory of all of those who died in an event that no one seems to want to recall or honor. I'll just do so in my own way. But I know there's some of you out there that have a tipping point of your own. Is it just because of the possible relations to the Shadows of Yore? Do you relate to Honor more and think that the Drifter is completely out of his gourd and definitely not to be trusted? Or is there more to it? I'd love to know your thoughts, and you know exactly where to leave them down below. Otherwise, it just feels good to be back. You know the buttons to press to let me know how you guys like this video, and subscribe for future content from me on Destiny and any other story-based titles I might feel the passion to cover in the future. But until next space time, my friends, take care.